The morning sun was rising slowly over Windsor Castle. The sky was clear with soft clouds floating like little boats. The tall windows of the castle allowed the warm light to enter, filling the rooms with a golden glow. Everything looked peaceful, almost perfect. Inside the palace, Prince William stood by the window. He was holding a cup of tea, but he was not drinking it. His eyes were staring far away, lost in deep thought. His face looked calm, but his heart was heavy. Something inside him did not feel right today, though he could not explain why. Outside in the garden, his wife, Kate, was playing with their children. She wore a light blue dress that danced gently in the wind. Her smile was soft, full of love, as she watched their little ones. Prince George was sitting under a tree reading a book. Princess Charlotte was carefully making a necklace of daisies. Little Prince Louis was running around trying to catch colorful butterflies, his small giggles filling the air. For a moment, it felt like a perfect family scene. There were no photographers, no reporters, no public eyes watching them. Just a normal family enjoying a beautiful morning together. But deep inside both William and Kate there was a feeling, a quiet fear they could not ignore. The quiet was broken when a knock came on the door. William turned quickly, his heart skipping a beat. The butler stood there, his face was pale, his hands were shaking slightly. "Your Royal Highness," the butler said softly. "There is an urgent call from Balmoral Castle." William's breath caught in his chest. Balmoral Castle. His mind immediately rushed to his grandmother, Queen Elizabeth II. She had been in good health recently. They had spoken not long ago. She had even played with the children during their last visit. But now this call brought worry and fear. Kate looked up from the garden. She saw William's face turn serious. She knew right away that something was wrong. William stepped closer to the butler. "What happened?" His voice was low but firm. The butler hesitated for a moment, then spoke again. "The Queen's doctors are very concerned, sir. They advise that close family members should come to Balmoral as soon as possible." William felt like the air had left the room. His heart pounded hard. In his chest, his hands felt cold. His grandmother, his second mother, his guide, his strength, needed him now. Kate had come inside by now. She walked quickly to William and gently placed her hand on his arm. Her eyes were filled with worry but also with love. "What is it?" she whispered. William swallowed hard and explained the call. Kate's face turned pale, but she stayed calm. She knew how much the Queen meant to William. The Queen had been a strong figure in both their lives, welcoming Kate into the family like her own daughter. "We need to leave at once," Kate said quietly. The staff began moving quickly. Bags were packed. Security was informed. Drivers were called. Within minutes, they were inside their car racing toward the airport. The car drove fast through the streets of London. People were walking, shopping, laughing, living their normal lives, not knowing the royal family was rushing to face a moment that could change everything. The world outside seemed normal, but inside that car, fear sat beside them. William sat in silence, staring out of the window. Kate held his hand tightly. She could feel his fingers shaking. She wanted to say something to comfort him, but words felt small at that moment. "Maybe she will be fine," Kate finally said softly. "She's strong. She's always been strong." William nodded slowly but said nothing. His mind was full of memories. He thought of his childhood, of his grandmother reading him bedtime stories, of her kind smiles during hard times. After his mother, Princess Diana, died, the Queen had become a pillar for him. She had helped him through the darkest days, and now he feared losing her too. Kate watched him closely. She knew how much pain he was holding inside. She wished she could take his pain away, but all she could do was be there beside him. The car reached the airport quickly. Their private plane was ready, engines running, waiting for them. There was no time for formalities or security checks. The staff could see the sadness in their faces and moved quietly to help. As the plane took off into the sky, the city of London grew smaller below them. The blue sky was calm, but inside their hearts a storm was growing. They were flying toward Balmoral, toward the unknown, toward what could be one of the most painful moments of their lives. The plane flew high in the sky, cutting through the soft white clouds. Inside the quiet cabin, William sat beside Kate, staring out of the small window. Below them, the green fields of England stretched like a beautiful painting. But today, neither of them could enjoy the view. Their hearts were too heavy. Their thoughts were too dark. William's mind was filled with memories. He remembered being a little boy, holding his grandmother's hand as she walked him through the royal gardens. She had always been so kind, so strong. She taught him about duty, about honor, and about love. She was more than a queen to him. She was his guide, his protector, his second mother. Kate sat beside him, holding his hand tightly. She could feel the tension in his fingers. She could see the worry in his eyes. She wanted to comfort him, but she knew that words were not enough. This pain was deep. It came from a place of love, of fear, and of helplessness. Kate also thought of her own moments with the Queen. She remembered how nervous she had been when she first met her. But the Queen had welcomed her with warmth and kindness. She had shared stories, laughed with her, and made her feel like part of the family from the very beginning. Kate respected her deeply. She loved her like her own grandmother. The flight felt longer than it was. Every minute passed like an hour. The silence between them was heavy, but full of unspoken love and support. William finally broke the silence. His voice was soft, almost a whisper. "I don't know if I can face this, Kate." Kate turned to him, her eyes full of tears. "You are stronger than you think, William," she said gently. "She raised you to be strong, and whatever happens, we will face it together." William nodded, trying to hold back his tears. But the fear inside him was growing stronger. The phone call had sounded urgent. The Queen's doctors had said there was not much time. He feared they might arrive too late. The plane began to descend. The beautiful hills of Scotland came into view. Balmoral Castle stood quietly in the distance, surrounded by tall trees and peaceful nature. The place was so beautiful, but today, it felt cold and sad. As the plane landed, cars were already waiting for them. The royal staff moved quickly, understanding the seriousness of the moment. William and Kate stepped into the car without delay. The driver sped through the winding Scottish roads, heading toward the castle. The drive was quiet. The only sounds were the soft hum of the engine and the whispering wind outside. Kate looked at William, who stared straight ahead, lost in his own world of worry and pain. The castle came into sight. Balmoral stood tall and strong, just like it always had. But something was different today. The air felt heavy. The beautiful stone walls seemed colder. There were several cars already parked outside. Other family members had arrived before them. That sight alone made Kate's stomach twist with fear. They stepped out of the car. The staff at the door greeted them with sad, quiet faces. No one smiled. No one spoke more than a few words. Everyone knew why they were here. Inside the castle, the hallways were filled with old paintings and photographs of past generations. William walked quickly through the familiar halls. He remembered running here as a child, laughing and playing. But today, every step felt heavier, as if the walls themselves were mourning. Kate stayed close by his side. She did not speak. She simply held his arm, giving him silent strength. They were led upstairs to the Queen's private rooms. Family members were gathered in the sitting room. William's father, King Charles, sat in a chair looking pale and tired. Camilla stood nearby, her face full of sadness. Other relatives sat quietly, their faces showing fear, grief, and love. When William and Kate entered, everyone looked up. No words were needed. The pain in their eyes told the whole story. King Charles stood and hugged his son tightly. His voice was low and broken. "You made it in time. She is still with us, but very weak." William closed his eyes for a moment, trying to gather his strength. His hands trembled slightly as he prepared himself to enter his grandmother's room. Kate whispered softly into his ear, You are not alone. I am with you." With one final breath, William stepped forward toward the door that led to one of the most important and heartbreaking moments of his life. The sun was slowly disappearing behind the Scottish hills as the car carrying William and Kate approached Balmoral Castle. The sky turned orange and pink, but to William and Kate, the beauty of the scene meant nothing. Their hearts were heavy. Fear and sadness sat quietly between them. As they reached the castle, they saw several cars already parked outside. William recognized them at once. His father, King Charles, was there, along with other close family members. Seeing all the cars made the terrible truth even clearer. This was serious. This was not just a simple visit. This was something much more painful. The castle stood tall and grand as always, but today it felt different. The air was heavy and the usual warmth of Balmoral seemed far away. The staff stood quietly at the entrance. Their faces were serious, their eyes filled with quiet sorrow. No one spoke unless they had to. Even the wind seemed to whisper softly, as if respecting the moment. A butler led William and Kate through the familiar halls. These halls were full of childhood memories for William. He had spent many happy summers here as a boy, running through these very corridors, laughing with his brother Harry and his grandmother, the Queen. But today there was no laughter, only silence. Kate held William's hand tightly as they walked. She could feel his pain. She knew that these walls held precious memories, but now they also held a coming goodbye. Finally, they reached the Queen's private room. The door was slightly open. William gently pushed it and stepped inside. The room was quiet and dimly lit. Soft lamps gave a warm but gentle glow. The Queen lay in her bed, looking small and fragile under the white sheets. But when her eyes met William's, they were still bright and full of love. William's throat tightened. Tears filled his eyes, but he tried to stay strong. He walked slowly to her bedside and sat down. He took her hand gently. It felt cold and thin, but her grip was still firm. "My dear boy," the Queen whispered, her voice weak but steady. "You're here." "I'm here, Granny," William answered softly. "We're all here." Kate stood quietly behind him, her heart breaking as she watched. The Queen's eyes moved to Kate, and a small smile appeared on her face. With a quiet breath, she whispered to Kate, "Take care of him." Kate nodded, unable to speak as tears filled her eyes. The Queen looked back at William. "I am so proud of you," she whispered. "You have grown into a fine man, a kind man, and one day, you will be a great king." William's tears slowly rolled down his cheeks. He tried to speak, but no words came. His heart was full of love and pain at the same time. The Queen smiled gently again. "Remember everything I taught you, William. Serve the people with kindness. Lead with your heart." "I promise, Granny," William whispered, holding her hand tighter. The Queen closed her eyes for a moment, resting. Her breathing was slow and weak. The room was completely silent except for the soft sound of her breaths. Every second felt precious. Kate quietly stepped forward and gently placed her hand on William's shoulder. She stood beside him, giving silent strength. Minutes passed like hours. The Queen's breathing grew slower and softer. Her chest rose and fell gently until finally, it stopped. The room fell into complete silence. William sat frozen, still holding her hand. The tears streamed down his face as he whispered, "Goodbye, Granny." Kate leaned down and softly kissed the Queen's forehead. Her eyes were full of tears. She whispered softly, "Rest now, Your Majesty." Behind them, King Charles and other family members entered the room. The grief was heavy on everyone's face. King Charles hugged his son tightly, both of them crying quietly. They all knew this was not just a personal loss, but a loss for the whole nation. The Queen, who had led her people for so many years, was gone. Outside the room, the staff began preparing for what was to come. The world would soon learn the sad news. But for this quiet moment inside this room, it was just a family mourning the loss of someone they deeply loved. As the sun finally disappeared completely behind the hills, darkness covered Balmoral. But inside William's heart, the light of his grandmother's love would always remain. The sun was setting slowly behind the tall trees of Balmoral Castle. The soft orange light touched the old stone walls, making the castle look even more peaceful and quiet. But inside, there was no peace. The family was gathered. Everyone knew that these were the Queen's final moments. William sat beside his grandmother's bed, still holding her fragile hand. Her skin felt cold, but her eyes remained bright. Kate stood behind him, gently resting her hands on his shoulders, silently, giving him strength. The room was filled with a soft sadness, the kind that wraps around the heart and makes breathing harder. The Queen looked at William and smiled weakly. Even though she was weak, her eyes showed love, peace, and pride. "My dear boy," she whispered, softly, her voice almost like a breeze. "You have grown into a good man. You have made me so proud." William's eyes filled with tears. He tried to hold them back, but they fell anyway. He leaned forward, bringing her hand to his lips and kissing it gently. His voice broke as he spoke. "Thank you, Granny, for everything, for always being there for me." The Queen's lips trembled as she smiled again. "Take care of your family, William, and when your time comes, lead with kindness, like your mother would have wanted." Kate's eyes filled with tears as she listened to the Queen's last words. The Queen had always welcomed her into the family with open arms. She had been a guide, a friend, and a grandmother. The Queen looked at Kate for a moment and whispered, "Thank you, dear Kate, for loving him, for standing by him." Kate smiled through her tears, softly replying, "It's my honor, Your Majesty." The Queen's breathing became slower and weaker. The family stood close, watching her, loving her, silently saying goodbye. The room was filled with a deep, painful silence, broken only by the soft sound of her breathing. Then, very gently, as if falling into a peaceful sleep, the Queen took her last breath. For a moment, time stopped. Nobody moved. Nobody spoke. The room was frozen in sorrow. The long life of a remarkable woman had come to an end. William held her hand tightly, even though it had grown still. Tears streamed down his face. Kate leaned closer, placing her hand on his, whispering softly, "She's at peace now." King Charles, standing nearby, closed his eyes, his face full of sadness, but also calm acceptance. He had lost his mother, and the world had lost a queen. Slowly, the family left the room, giving William and Kate a few more moments alone with her. William looked at his grandmother one last time, whispering softly, "Goodbye, Granny. I love you." Kate took his hand, and together they left the room, their hearts heavy but filled with love and memories. Outside the castle, the official announcement was made. The world now knew. The Queen had passed. Across the country, flags were lowered. The news spread quickly. People gathered in front of Buckingham Palace, lighting candles, laying flowers, crying quietly as they remembered their beloved Queen. The nation was mourning, but inside Balmoral, a family was grieving a loss much deeper than titles and crowns. They had lost the heart of their family. Later that evening, William and Kate found a quiet room and made a very difficult phone call to their children. The children were safe at home with their nanny. Kate spoke gently, her voice shaking. "Children, we have something very sad to tell you." George, Charlotte, and Louis listened quietly, their young faces full of worry. "Great-grandmother has gone to heaven," Kate said softly. Charlotte's eyes filled with tears. She hugged her mother tightly and cried. George stayed silent for a moment, trying to understand the seriousness of the news. Finally, he asked, "Will Daddy be king now?" William smiled through his tears and explained, "No, Grandfather Charles will be king now. One day, many years from now, it may be my turn, but for now we will all help Grandfather." Little Louis, too young to understand completely, whispered, "We won't have tea with Granny anymore?" William and Kate hugged their children closely. Kate wiped Charlotte's tears and softly said, "We will always remember the happy times with her. She loved all of you very much." The children nodded, trying to be brave, but the sadness stayed in the room like a heavy cloud. As night fell, William and Kate stood by the large window of Balmoral Castle. The stars were shining brightly like tiny lights in the dark sky. Below, mourners stood silently with flowers and candles, paying their respects. William whispered to Kate, "She gave her whole life to her people, and she gave her love to us." Kate leaned her head on his shoulder, and now she rests in peace knowing she was deeply loved. They stood there hand in hand, as husband and wife, as parents, as future king and queen. But tonight, simply as a grandson and granddaughter-in-law, saying goodbye to someone who had meant the world to them, it was a scene the world would never forget.